think we may be live. If you guys can see me, if you guys can hear me, let me know in the comment box, in the little chat box at the side. I've seen a couple of y'all have been in before the stream even started. I'm going to pop it out real quick. Let's see what we got. We got a few of y'all in there. But, if you're watching this right now, if you're seeing me live, test, 1, 2, 3. Just quickly let me know in the chat box so we can get started. Because today, oh boy, have I got something interesting for you. And even though nobody's in there yet, there we go. We got 𝗕𝗘𝗪𝗏𝗍𝗬 saying, yo. Oh, we got 𝗘𝗁, we got Writing with Beads. 143. Yo, champ. Hi. What's up, guys? Welcome to yet another crypto stream. The real 2K God says, final warning. Well, for me at least, I don't really like to go on these warnings too often, but I think it's a two-sided thing. But as the stream continues on, first I've got a good story, then we'll talk about some more questions. I think it'll become quite apparent why I'm calling this the final warning. And mostly, let me just explain it like this, it's because you don't get chances like this very often, which again has two sides, but you'll see it. So let's first quickly establish, over the past couple of weeks, the crypto market has been absolutely ass. We can all... we can all accept that. Oh, sorry, I hit the spot a bit too much. So we all can establish that the market has been absolutely ass for the past couple of weeks. But why exactly is that? Well, there's a few reasons people are naming right now. One has to do with the Fed. It's expected no more rate cuts are coming, and the market's basically turning to shit, which in turn can basically be attributed to stocks. Stock market has been kind of shaky at best. I mean, the crash on the 10th of the 10th, you can't really attribute to stocks all the way. But right now, you could say that stocks also have been having the worst month for November since 2008. And so it's not that strange Bitcoin is having its worst move since 2018. But one little counter to that is we have to establish a base whatever happened on the 10th of the 10th. Why? Because in reality, and this is what a lot of these guys are talking about, whatever happened that day, whatever bug occurred that day, that's what 𝗕𝗏 is saying, whatever happened that day basically started a whole cascade of downwards. Remember, just 2 days before, just 2 days before we saw highs. This happened and boom, it's just been Bitcoin declining. And nowadays, I'm going to say the last week or so, there's this new line of thinking coming out. It's mostly fueled by banter, fueled by Rand. And he said, no, actually, whatever happened on the 10th of the 10th was actually not that much to do with a major exchange. Not that much to do with the stablecoin depegging. Not so much to do with ADL, with the deleveraging system. Not too much to do with the insurances, which is what some very smart guys in the business have told me. No, it has nothing to do with that. It has to do with MicroStrategy. And what the idea is there is that MicroStrategy is now in the middle between being a fund or basically more of a company. And apparently that really just came out over on the 10th of October, where the MSCI, the world's second biggest index company, published it below, questioning whether companies that hold crypto assets as a core business should be considered as companies or funds, and a new result of that will come out on January 15th of 2026. Some are stating that this is what caused the entirety of the crypto market to just collapse because people started to price that in. They started to sell based on that. Quickly in the chat box, y'all, if you're watching the stream right now, yes, it is live for any of you wondering about that. But also, pretty quickly here, comment down where you're watching this from. He says, dude, where are you located is 6. Where I'm located, are you still Amsterdam? Is 6 a.m. where I'm located. Boys, for me, it's almost evening. I'm not so sure exactly where you're watching this from. But, yeah. East Tennessee, or 6 a.m. where you're located. Damn, that's crazy. So we got in the chat today. We've got 160 people watching. Oh, that's pretty good for about 3 minutes into the stream. Or 4 minutes into the stream. We got Switzerland. Maybe I should not show this. Where you been hiding, DustyBC? You guys know where I live by this point. I think most of y'all know. Watching from Mexico. Welcome. That is nice. We got UK in there. It's a quiet day for the chat box today. Basement. Hey, alcohol. Hey, welcome back, brother. Watching from the basement as always, huh? Hope you still got some nice snacks over there. Hopefully you're enjoying. So, yeah. Also, this is crazy to me. Sorry I'm interrupting here. By the way, dude, I've been watching your videos since 2017. You're great. Since 2017, huh? So, how much money are you down? No, I'm joking. If you've been since 2017, things should be nice. And we'll cover that in just a second. Also, be a 8-second... the second girl says, are we doomed? No, not really. Because I think at the end of the day, my final warning here is actually kind of a good one. But I'll continue on with the story, right? So let's continue on and establish this. I don't know if exactly this MicroStrategy situation, the whole debt situation, or the whole big exchange caused the entire market to crash. I don't think we'll ever really figure out which exactly was the main part until we get to, I'm going to say, about a month out or so from the major decision in January. However, the reason I'm saying that is because if the market shifts heavily based on sentiment shifts for MicroStrategy, we could attribute more to the move in hindsight to that. If the market doesn't really move at all, even though the date is getting closer, we can maybe take some power away from that. But a counter would be that it could also be that before this crash was actually mostly based on Trump, for example, Trump's statement of China, that just, and Trump's insiders shorting the market like crazy, and them having to deal with freaking, I don't know, the exchange, just saying something, right? Just saying something. And we all are just fantasizing things afterwards. It's hard, right? It's tough to say. What we can say, though, is that in reality, liquidity in all fronts ever since that day has been kind of strange. But also, when you take it from the perspective that a lot of these funds, a lot of these companies, a lot of these banks all want to get involved with this Bitcoin stuff, but they couldn't because of restrictions. Theoretically speaking, the floodgates, as we often call them, are getting open piece by piece. And you might argue that it's already happened because ETFs came along. And I would argue again that no, very recently here, just I think last week, I saw yet another statement of banks now being allowed to hold cryptocurrencies to pay for the transaction fees of these things. And it made me realize, there's probably a majority of major financial institutions out there that don't have the proper rails or proper systems in place yet to facilitate crypto things. That's obviously also why they might refer to other clients like BlackRock, etc., who can facilitate it, and perhaps there's some deals involved there. But a lot of banks most likely want to follow this Swiss model. I'm not exactly sure where. I've got it open somewhere here, but I've got a lot of freaking tabs open. I think it might be this one right here. The Luxembourg model. Let's quickly take a look at this, where they've also already converted 1% of their sovereign wealth fund into Bitcoin. You can get in now or after they reach 5, 10, or maybe even 50%. Because we all know many banks, many of these sovereign wealth funds, like within the UAE and all this, they're going to start coming up. But it takes a bit of time for them to do so. Many of them realize it's probably a good opportunity. And I want you to realize again, many of these players, the US, with the way in which things have been going, right? Many other countries that are holding a good amount of BTC on their balance sheet, many companies, some of the largest companies like BlackRock, the president of the United States, they all want this cryptocurrency stuff to succeed. You understand that they would make way too much money if this stuff continues on, right? And so, if you want to get the most recent of news, by the way, we've already gotten saved, and CZ confirmed it. So if you're wondering what was just said, I just want to quickly show you guys this video.
Bitcoin is like at 81, and you're looking at what I regard as being the single worst moment in this decline was the moment between 330 and 430, and then Williams comes on, and then suddenly everything's fine. I don't think so.
You don't think everything's fine?
No, there's a lot of people who have to get out. Let them get out. This is not what suddenly they wave a magic wand. We obviously have real issues. We have issues with the building out the data center unlimited. We have issues with a lot of people, the strategies. Bitcoin is like at 80.
So the interesting part here is he's saying that the entire market was going down. It got really, really bad. And all of a sudden it got saved. Now, what exactly is that savior? If you're wondering, let me quickly pull it up here. Do I have it here or the other one? Quickly see. I got so much freaking stuff open, so I'm trying to find the best piece. So quickly scroll through this whole list of things. Regardless, I can just say it out loud as well. What saved it was Williams. Basically, the Fed came on and stating, oh, you know what, the rate cuts, we can actually probably get it done, something along those lines. And so the sentiments shifted from being mostly against rate cuts. I have it open, at least this I have as well. There was mostly against rate cuts before, I think at like 49%. All of a sudden now, the rate cut is at 73%. Let's see if that's changed again overnight. No, 71% again, so slightly down. But this is what we all established to be the main factor for not letting us crash to basically zero just yesterday. However, why is this an interesting piece, and why is this still debatably so good? The main reason I'm a bit skeptical with this whole situation is, first of all, because the crypto market didn't really recover that much recently. I mean, you can see XRP is back at 189, so it's still going down. Bitcoin is back to 83.6, still actually relatively quite okay. Mostly some altcoins are down more. But here's the kicker. When you start breaking it down, if this whole rate cut situation is now solved and they still are going to cut rates, why are we not recovering them? What is exactly keeping us so far down low? And I have two sides to think about this. One, man, when you break down what the price has done for example, XRP, we are so freaking low. Like, before I talked to you guys about the idea that I always just try to buy below this yellow line, below the moving average. Can you see that we almost never had that opportunity? There's been very small pieces ever since November of 2024 of just crazy euphoria. And that's because XRP actually did some of the craziest numbers this season, going up like what? So you can see here, within just a year or so, let's say, it went up 700%. So it was an 8x from this bottom almost, right? So that is obviously also why the average is only slowly but surely gathering. Meaning, right now, the prices that we are seeing, sure, it feels low to many, but in reality, it's not that low. Or let me say it, it's not that bad. Realistically, we still have a little bit of ways to go down before you really start thinking, ooh, we're breaking all the previous lows. And that's really essentially when we get to the 177 mark or something along those lines. That's when things kind of start getting scary for XRP. Right now, this seems like a really, really good buying opportunity. And I'll remind you all, this is specifically for XRP. You guys remember what happened here, right? I mean, we went from $3.40 to what? Let's see here real quick. So the XRP price went from $3.40 in the next, let's quickly see here how long it took. In the next 82 days, 41, this is a 2-day chart, but you get the idea still. In the next 82 days, it went down roughly 52%, from $3.40 to roughly $1.60. Right here, if we take, again, establish the exact same basis, this was panic, by the way, all throughout. A lot of people said, no, it can't recover, but then it did. Here again, looking at prices, we went down roughly 52% in 126 days. So same amount down, just about 50% more days. Who is saying right now that this can't actually replicate itself? Because again, when you take a look at what exactly happened back then as well, it was a slow but sure decline, very, very scary. But even though it's not exactly the same, as we had an impulse right there, little pullback, major, or I guess the breakthrough impulse, but we did not break all-time high for most people's calculations. Fell back down, fell back slightly below the neck though. So as you can see right here, actually whatever impulse we had right there, we fell below that. So this is what people will consider like getting to capitulation, because you're breaking below the previous supports. Then we actually were not able to make a new high as well. We actually just made it like a little double top. Fell right back below, and then all of a sudden we had that breakthrough that actually broke above the all-time high for most people's calculations. Like, this move is not completely textbook. There's probably some textbook you can put onto it, but realistically here, this stuff is kind of stupid, kind of strange. Now, this move downwards, though, you can see XRP really tried its best to just continue having the same basis. You can see here, it kept bouncing off 270, 1, 2, 3, 4, before it finally broke on that day, the 10th of the 10th, right, when the mass capitulation event. Now, it's basically only been down ever since, but that's because everything has been going down. Everything. But nothing here is indicating that we can't just resurge from these levels. Matter of fact, even if it were to go down slightly lower, have an even worse performance than right here, previous time, what is stopping it from making that resurgence? Well, I'm going to say it's mostly just on Bitcoin's shoulders. If Bitcoin's able to do it, we're able to get through with this. And the funny thing is, take a look at this. Don't get me wrong. I think the market is wrong to punish the hyperscalers and NVIDIA, but that's what yesterday was about. That and the inability to stem the crypto losses because of all the leverage and no presidential pardon for the buyers. I keep telling you that there's always people grave dancing on this, but in reality, I don't really understand why so many people are talking about AI and a negative thing, or saying it's a bubble, or saying that, because I keep asking you, what's the next big catalyst for crypto? Most likely, if stocks like the AI stocks here continue to be bullish, continue to be at least sideways, but not just massively crash, because that would be bad, we have a good chance this all recovers in due course. Perhaps indeed some market makers are sidelined. Every market maker I've spoken to is doing pretty good still. I mean, that crash is a strange one, but at the end of the day, market makers mostly operate in kind of a risk-averse way. And so when you argue that, oh, the market makers are down or done or what, which ones exactly are you talking about? Did they get wrecked for providing these orders? Most of them have a good deal with the exchange as well. If we're talking about the real top, it could be that they actually faced a big loss that day. But then on the opposite side, if you know the amount of money that some of these companies are making one loss like this every few years is just a business operation, business expense that they could probably get over. And again, what we're talking about, a market maker whose whole main reason for existence is providing liquidity and basically playing around with liquidity, all of a sudden has ran out of liquidity. What's the purpose of that market maker then? But there's always still money to be made, like in the market right now, to basically provide a bid and ask. So, I mean, they will always exist. Perhaps they change from many big companies to a few smaller ones, but that's not true. There's tons of them out there. Most of them did not get wrecked. Most of them are still fine. There is, however, a potential that right now they're more hesitant to play the market because they're potentially warning for or scared of another 10-10. But then in reality, again, if they just apply safer strategies, it's not that crazy. Anyway, let me get to this one. So there's two parts here that I wanted to quickly share. Let's first of all say quickly, if you've not pressed that like button yet, make sure you do so. We've got about 270 people watching. That's a pretty good crowd. If you've not pressed that like button yet, make sure you do so as well. 270 people, 36 likes. This can be at least at 100 right now. I also vouch to make sure I live stream every single day right here. And I just want to get a recurring crowd, but I also want to make it a theme that every single time you join the live stream, you just quickly tap that button because you've got nothing to lose. It doesn't cost you anything. It just hopefully helps the stream perform a little bit better. But that's about it, at least for what I think it does. It doesn't put money in my pocket. Don't worry about that. All it does is just hopefully help the stream do a little bit better. And that makes me happy. So let's quickly read this quote. My friend Connor said, push Bitcoin down to where everyone thinks it's a bottom, so they buy. Push it down more, so they buy the dip. Push it down more, so they buy again. Down one more time, so they think, okay, maybe it's over. Then one down more time. Just one last time because they think this is the last time, right? But then down again, they settle the loss because they think, you know what, this stuff is going to zero. It goes down again, so they think, you see, I was right. It goes down a little bit further, so they start to short now because they're doing good on selling everything. They're happy. It's going down even further, so they decide to up the short, go a bit crazier because this is going to zero. Then it goes down a bit further. They think, you know what, I'm a freaking genius. You knew it. The market relieves themselves a little bit, goes up a little bit, so they now short with full potential because this stuff is going to zero. And it just goes up like crazy because the bull market is back. This is, I'm going to say, the average cycle of the most average of crypto holders. As long as, in my opinion, as long as you do not think this stuff is going to actual zero, shorting with conviction when panicking is very, very bad. Can you short with massive amounts of profit potential? Sure. And actually, matter of fact, as you guys now may know or may not know, I've been sharing it for a little bit. Let me quickly find here the exact thing. Telegram view, there we go. Here's, for example, our group. You can see if we go to swing trades, this is some of the stuff we've been sharing over in Telegram, absolutely for free. You could check everything out. Sometimes you get stopped out, for example. Sometimes something bad happens. But in reality, when you break this down and keep watching over a period of time, I said before, you can also just take a chill. Don't actually catch them from the get-go. You can just watch it for a little bit. You realize that in reality, shorting can be good, or that most of the time it's quite accurate. Regardless, check this out. This is the first distribution below. It's just our Telegram group. Check it out. And to get back to the story here, why this is relevant, is most people that do not think it's going to zero, they just think it's going down a bit, should not be shorting unless they've got some really tight margins, because most of the time you are wrong. And so my warning, I wanted to kind of build up a little bit more, but let me just quickly establish then a warning, so maybe some people are satisfied. Let me quickly grab the right piece here. Documenting Sailor. If I put $100 into Bitcoin in 2010, I'd have $2.8 billion now. No. If you bought $100 of Bitcoin in 2010 and watched it go to $1,000, $100,000, $1.7 million and did nothing, and then you watched it go from $1.7 million all the way back down to $170,000 and still did nothing, and then watched it go from $170,000 to 10 mil and then 100 mil and still did nothing, then so that withered down all the way back to $18 million. Still did nothing. Then over the next surge, saw it go from 18 mil to 390 mil. Then did nothing. Then see that go down all the way to back to 85 mil. Oh, poo-hoo. Did nothing. And then see it go to 1.6 billion and still did nothing. Then see that go down to 390 million, still did nothing. And then you see 2.8 billion. Oh yeah, then you turn $100 into 2.8 billion. One thing most people don't understand, if I look at my crypto journey and I look at many of y'all's, at the end of the day, if I were to get a freaking you know what? I'm thinking about this now. If I were to get $1 for every single time, that I, okay, this is not that much. I was going to say, if I got $1 for every single time somebody told me this crypto stuff is dead, I'd at least be freaking, I could be wiping my tears away whenever the market goes down with all the money that we'd make, right? And here's the kicker. This is a very important piece to understand. First of all, most people always think that the moment the market crashes, it's going to go down forever. It's going to zero. They don't really put their full faith in it as they're not really selling and they're not massively shorting. Then again, every single person who's been of that opinion thus far, remember this really clearly, like Peter Schiff, have been wrong. because crypto is not going to zero. It's always continuing to go up. Let me also say this. Even if you think it's going to zero, what is the probability that you are so right and that this is the moment we actually go to zero? Well, again, if most traders are wrong and everybody's talking about the idea that this is where Bitcoin goes down for a long time, what is the probability they're all right? Pretty small. Here's Peter Schiff. He said the financial media got completely duped by the crypto industry into believing that a digital pyramid scheme is a legitimate asset class that investors, corporations, and governments should own. As Bitcoin collapses, it will take the reputation of the financial media down with it. And I counter that to say, first of all, that would be very bad for everybody involved. It's the same thing for NVIDIA right now. If you're grave dancing on NVIDIA or you want them to fail, I don't understand how, because like Jensen here said, the whole world would have fallen apart in terms of the economy if they missed earnings in Q3. That would have been freaking awful, right? It would have been crazy. And here also, Peter Schiff, let me relate that back. You know, this guy has been a freaking bear on Bitcoin for a long time. And Rakesh says, zoom out, Peter. You've been saying that is going to zero, basically, Bitcoin, since it was at $10,000. And he said, and I'll be saying it again when it's back at 10,000. And I would argue that I prefer to just believe in something and make a lot of money in the process that turned out to potentially to be stupid. But in reality, Peter Schiff would have been way better off just freaking being a bull on it or hating it in essence and still making money on it, which could be the same for JP Morgan and all these companies. It's very, very plausible that many of them actually do not like the tech, do not like the idea, but they know there's money to be made for the time being. It could very well be so that many are not a big fan of the way AI is hyped up, but betting against AI, in my opinion, is kind of stupid. Because there's a way higher probability of it succeeding, but more importantly, if it does not succeed, everything is screwed. So why go against that grain? Why go against the working system? So where does my warning again collide with the rest of the story? Well, partially just with XRP. Remember, just a few months ago, in April of this year, this is where things looked at its worst. What would have been the best course of action back then? Try to buy. And now, I'm not an advocate of trying to buy falling knives, right? Falling knives. I'm not the biggest advocate of saying, you know what, this is the moment where you turn around, so you better take it. No, there's definitely some potential for us falling down further and having the worst times of our lives. But here's the kicker. If you're in the middle ground and you're not completely exiting crypto, you're still in it, and you're thinking, oh, but it could fall down further, realize this. The more that we fall, the more that we actually crash down below here, the smaller the chance that the crypto market will recover anytime soon. I mostly think that if we're trying to catch these knives at, again, relatively quite low prices, we're talking not about trying to catch a falling knife this day, where just the entire day is falling down, or yesterday, really, when Bitcoin was going to 80 point something thousand. In those moves, I'm not actually the biggest fan of buying that dip, even though I do. It's not a theoretical best attempt. And the main reason for that is because if the market just crashes every hour by a few percent, or it's 5% or 6%, 7% down in an hour, you don't really know what's causing it. It's just out of nothing, it feels like. It's sketchy because you do not know how far of a candle downwards you're going to get. Potentially you get another candle like this and you try to catch it at $80 or $2, for example, and it falls all the way back to like $1.13. You do not want to catch that one. But in reality, over a prolonged period of time, like right now, theoretically speaking, right, this does not really look like a falling knife too much. It's just a slow and steady decline with an extended, or I'm going to say accelerated decline the past 3 weeks, 2 weeks especially, right? However, we're getting to a point here where XRP, relatively to previous prices, is getting so cheap that we either establish now for ourselves that there's no proper bottom until like $1 per XRP again, or even 50 cents an XRP, or this is again where things get too juicy to not at least scoop up some. And again, that does not mean you go all in. It just means that this is really the point where I think it's more risky to not be involved or to not take it than to take it. And the same thing applies for the most part to Bitcoin. The closer we get towards these freaking 77K or 76K lows, the closer we are to the point where I'm thinking, you know what, if this breaks, it's going to be all hell loose for a long time. You know, what then is the next level to hold for? We're going to watch for like $50,000 a Bitcoin. So I might as well just understand that the way things are moving right now for Bitcoin, you can see it's still actually mostly an upwards and nice looking trend. It's not as clean as if Bitcoin would have actually stayed above like 99,000, which is where I think the theoretical bottom should have been. If we just establish how the market has been moving for the most part for Bitcoin, I'm going to say that realistically, I'm going to say about 99,000 or slightly below it would have been a pretty logical bottom, maybe like 95 here. This crash, perhaps this part of the crash is just because of things like MicroStrategy here or the Fed, or perhaps because the S&P, like I said earlier, also had its worst month since November. There's a lot of things to be said about what exactly caused the price to go here. But we are so oversold in the grand scheme of things. And again, let's go back. Let's do a weekly chart here. Let's look back for a little bit just at previous prices, if we look at this moving average line, right? Let me just quickly get rid of these two here. The yellow line. How often do we go below that? It's been many, many years since we did. And the last time was actually December of 2021 that we fell below and really never got above it. So this is what you also consider to be the bear market. This is what people consider that, right? A year and a half or so. But well, I'm going to say realistically, it's from this top to about this bottom, roughly 1 year, as you can see. But however, the thing is, the bear market started then a few weeks before we actually got below that line. If we establish it though, how many weeks has it been since Bitcoin actually crossed that line to the upside again? The longest period of time here has been, let's say it touched it here, so about 315 days. Yeah, the longest period of not touching the line is about 315 days. We've only now been going for roughly 2 weeks or so, right? If we were to go 315 days of staying below this line, the longest ever, we'd be in September all the way of 2026. That would be pretty freaking crazy, right? That would be a long-ass time to wait. However, let me establish this. Multiple times in this bull run here as well, did things look really, really gloomy. And this is a bit of a short chart. I can't see that far back. The things look really, really gloomy, and it was able to recover. On XRP's front, you can see it. On almost every front, you can see it. What we're seeing right now is so atrociously bad. If we even look back at this run right here, when the bear market started, are you seeing that as to how much we're falling right now, how relatively crazy that is in comparison to what we saw before? The previous time, we fell below it once, established ourselves again, slowly but surely declined, with here 2 weeks of decline, 1 week of green. Right now, it's 2, 3, 4 weeks of some of the worst decline we've ever seen. And I mean, you can see that in bull market territory sometimes. Here we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 red candles in a row, which, by the way, got followed by Bitcoin making yet another new all-time high. So this 3-4 weeks in a row of negative candles does not necessarily mean that we can't just make another high right afterwards. It's the fact that we are so undervalued right now. We're so oversold relative to the average. And from that angle, I keep on saying, right now, if I'm putting up a shot here, I'm just saying that this, for a lot of people, is going to be that opportunity of a lifetime, where they take that risk and realize, you know what, we are very, very oversold. We are $40,000 down from the top. We were basically almost 40% down from the top in almost every coin. This stuff, and again, this is an opinion thing, but most likely is not going to zero. We have almost never seen it be so low relatively. And confidence, if we're looking at like fear and greed and extra stuff, be so low, is it not worth it to go for it? And so where does my warning come in? I'm realizing, specifically based on these prices, that people are selling this as if the world has come down. Fundamentally, nothing about our cryptos has essentially changed. The only thing that's changed is some factors. Now, the Fed looked a bit iffy, but potentially the 10th of December, so put that in your freaking calendars, this could all change around. If they actually cut rates, it could be that the bull market just resumes straight away. MicroStrategy, there's some fear. Okay, so let's again establish this. The 10th of December, if the Fed comes in and cuts rates, could be all instantly bullish again for everybody. If we get closer towards this new date for MicroStrategy's fund or company thing, we could actually get some new news coming out, maybe some new establishings as to why MicroStrategy is not a fund, but an actual company. This could again be a very bullish influx. And if we're talking about stocks, it could be so that the S&P, NASDAQ, or whatever, because of perhaps AI, because of what, is able to turn itself around. I don't think even if AI is a bubble, even if, right, because it's going up too much, that's going to pop anytime soon because of the new headwinds they're making in AI. If all of a sudden all the new advancements stop, there's an argument to be made that we get a little pullback, but in reality, AI is so freaking booming right now, and it makes sense. What is the thing everybody's talking about all the time? AI. What is the thing people are trying to make most new companies in right now? Everything AI related. It doesn't make sense for it to pop so soon after it's been established. It's still very much infantile. I think this could get way crazier before that one were to pop. And again, that's a temporary pop. AI is not going away. It's only getting bigger. It's not a real pop in that sense if it's not going in and only getting bigger. However, some could argue that with the .com situation, it just went a bit too high too fast, even though .com is obviously still here, still around, still huge, you know, and so it's not necessarily the same as the 2008 financial crisis. It's a bit of a different one, a bubble like that, right? So again, it could be. I'm just saying it doesn't really make a lot of sense right here because we're quite small as if you compare it to how big AI is. And there's still a lot of gains to be made just because of how, I'm going to say, little people are actually investing in it relative to how big it should be, in my opinion. But that's besides the point. So all these main factors that were dragging us down, you could argue market maker liquidity has now been vanished. And they're saying that about liquidity sweep and this is all coming about. This is all fixing itself because if you have a mass capitulation event like on the 10th of the 10th, sure, it may take some time for, let's say, these bots or these programs to set themselves back straight. But let's say it takes 2 months, or let's say it takes, 2 months. Then again, from the 10th of October to the 10th of December, should probably be established by then again, right? So what exactly are the main factors pushing us down at that point? Well, the only thing people are saying right now is it's pushing down because it's pushing down and people are giving up. But really, so we're saying now that crypto is going to zero again because people are giving up? Well, one thing a good trader that I know is saying is it feels very tough to see this as capitulation due to the fact that so many funds are in profit heading into the end of the year. There's a little incentive to knife catch, which again is true. Try and buy a price that's continuously going down, plus step in front of this relentless selling and potentially give back carry. This is again talking about funds that are in massive amounts of profit that might not want to buy going into the end of the year because they've already established massive profits for themselves, and carry basically in this case means here they make a percentage on whatever money they make for the fund, right? They have their standard fees and they get a percentage depending on how much profit they make. If they've got a good amount of profit made and they get, let's say, 20% of their profit that they made for them, they don't want to give that back, right? And so they might actually wait for the new year because in the new year, new opportunity again to potentially get a carry. But if you start the year negatively, well, the only thing is those people are not going to be happy, your clients, but at least you already got your payday. So some of them may want to wait till the start of the year, let's say January 1st, really, to start this new strategy. Let's say January 2nd. Crypto feels like we're approaching near-term bottom, but equities, who knows? And here again, I established that equities and crypto don't necessarily have to move one-to-one. They often do, but they don't have to. And here's also 𝗕𝗫'𝘀, who yesterday said, here at 86,000, this is the first time where Bitcoin feels like nice to kind of accumulate for a longer term. It trades as a high beta risk asset on shorter time frames when equities are weak, but long-term it continues to decouple upwards as the world's choice of digital gold with increasingly scarce supply. Don't make the mistake of confusing the two time frames when deciding to stack. But remember, for the long term, for this crypto stuff, nothing has changed. Why act like it has when the market goes down a little bit? Why all of a sudden think, oh no, this is all going to zero because what has changed about the fundamentals? What has changed about the outlook we've talked about previously? What has changed about when we talked about $150,000 Bitcoin at this top? Nothing. Not that much. Fundamentally, not that much has changed. The only thing is, I see it like this. Before, to go to 150K, you were getting 20% gains. Right now, almost, you're getting yourself 100% gains. That's the main difference I see right here. And sure, Bitcoin may look riskier now than it looked at the top, but I was buying Bitcoin mostly throughout this whole process, not in great chunks, but I was. If I now get a 40% discount from those levels, why not take it with a bit more seriousness? And you may say, yeah, because the trend has shifted from mostly up to mostly down. And I again counter that by saying, realistically, it's not looking as beautiful, but I'm going to say that trend has really shifted the moment that Bitcoin decides to really break down below around $78,000. The moment it starts to fall below that, things may start to look a bit scarier for Bitcoin. But again, that's the risk we're going to take by trying to actually get ourselves a really undervalued asset right now. And again, this takes some balls because a lot of people are not willing to do that. But that's also where there's mostly opportunity. If everybody was doing it, the price would instantly recover. But a lot of people are not doing it because they're scared, and that's, again, why there's a good opportunity to be made. Is it risky? Sure. There's a potential for Bitcoin actually breaking through. There's a potential for XRP breaking through these previous bottoms, and this could be quite bad for the medium term. But there's also the potential that we turn around back pretty quickly here because of, like I just told you, all these main factors that were pushing us down are kind of done and over now. If I'm really being honest with you, I don't really fully understand what's still causing us to move down except for fear and except for the idea that the cycle is broken, it's over with. But remember, most people are wrong. So if most people are saying that the bear market is coming, it's over, well, that means most likely it's not the case. So there was a lot of articles recently about saying, oh, the new bear market is going to be started because of digital asset treasuries collapsing. Well, we don't really know yet about their collapse until the 10th of the 10th or 16th of January. And 𝗕𝗫'𝘀 here says, hopium. Not really. I'm just sharing my honest opinion. You don't have to accept it. If you have a better theory here, just explain your theory right now in detail. Matter of fact, what I could also do next stream is just get somebody on here. By the way, this dreaming was not about me. It was about Peter Schiff saying $10,000 of BTC. But in reality, none of the stuff I'm saying here, I think is really that strange. And again, we're all basing this on the idea that people are emotional creatures and that they act based on whatever's already happened, right? I mean, that's obviously also how people trade the market. You act on whatever's happened before. But you also got to understand that there's always an inherent bias to stay negative when things are looking negative. But sometimes that reason for being negative doesn't actually apply no more. But people don't realize that they need to update their systems, that they need to update their drivers. If we're talking about what caused us to go down, Fed, MicroStrategy, big exchange error, stocks. Okay, the only one that we can debate about is stocks. But the Fed, potentially, with their no rate cuts, may be fixed. Percentages all of a sudden is way higher. So that one is pretty logical. Okay, so that one's kind of fixed. MicroStrategy, well, we'll see in a few weeks. And actually, both of those we'll see on the 10th of December, basically. So we've got ourselves that date to watch out for 3 weeks from now. And in the middle, I understand if you're being careful, you don't want to buy nothing. Sure, makes sense as well. If you want to stay risk averse, you don't want to involve yourself in the market no more because of potentially the knife catch situation where we actually break below 77,000 and all of a sudden carnage starts. I get that too. But that's also where the opportunity would lie. That right now we potentially will never fall towards that bottom. We've actually fallen for weeks below the moving average. We're getting to a relatively quite cheap price. And the only other thing I can think of is trying to buy the moment that we get above the moving average again. But the only counter you have right then is that perhaps this actually happens within a week or within 3 days. Let's just say we get ourselves a nice basis back to $101,000 per Bitcoin. Does it then, and this is a good question for yourself, does it then get riskier or less risky? Almost any established investor would tell you it gets more risky the higher the price goes. Because right now, you're at 84,000 a BTC. Then you're at $100,000 plus a BTC. You're paying $16,000 more per Bitcoin than I am. And sure, that might be because the trend has now shifted, but I argue that the trend has not shifted until we break below 77. Sure, this is negative territory. And again, we also have an inherent bias to not catch a falling knife, because that hurts your freaking hand, right? But on the opposite side, how low, at which point do we think, oh, you know what, it's starting to get quite cheap? Because if you're thinking, no, let's never catch this knife, are you going to do that all the way towards zero? Or where do you establish a base of, oh, now it's good again? And I counter that. If you say, no, you know what, I'm going to catch it again once it breaks above a key level. Like I just said before, if you're buying at 101,000 and another person is buying at 84,000, essentially, regardless of trend, this person is getting themselves a better deal. Unless we've established that, no, this is most likely where the bear market starts, but I refuse to believe that. Hello, 𝗕𝗁𝗏𝗏𝗏 says, 10K soon, bro. Yeah, to each their own. I don't think that's going to happen. And if that is going to happen, some of y'all will get really, really rich if you're just opening massive shorts. And again, we have some shorts, part of the trading strategy, which is the first link in the description down below. But for my major positions, I'm not the biggest fan of shorting. Again, to establish the basis, if we right now are bearish, to which point do we think it can fall? Do we think, again, this previous base? Well, we can actually put orders there right now already. Or do we think no, because the moment it gets to this base, it will probably break through. And so it's going to go all the way towards the previous base before that, $55,000 a BTC. But then at that point, you know, and this is a logical thing, there may be so much panic because Bitcoin is down like 60% from its all-time high, that MicroStrategy is in a bad spot, a lot of funds are failing, a lot of companies go bankrupt, that we actually crash further and further and further. So that we eventually actually end up at what? The previous base of like $40,000 a BTC. But at that point, we've basically had a whole entire bear market already, and we're done for, right? There's nothing to talk about at that point anymore. Sure, about the next resurgence of crypto, but you get my drift, right? So getting back to that, if this does not hold, let's say, you know, let's call it $77,000, $78,000, does not hold anything above that. This area does not hold. Where is the next major area for support? I'm going to say there's an interesting little level at 71, 72, but let's just say that that's too close for comfort. We're going all the way back to like the 50s. And that's deep because at that point, MicroStrategy is screwed. All these companies are screwed. And so it's going to be hard to establish a base right there because, again, if this keeps happening in the pace at which it's going right now, we're there in what, 3 weeks at $50,000, something like that, at this same pace. But I think it's actually an accelerated move, meaning if we were to go down even further, most likely the speed at which we go down accelerates. Just like you can see right here, right? We fell down a little bit, fell down less. And actually, the moment we fell below some crucial levels or got there, the market dumped pretty hard. This is like March of 2025. Then again, we established a base and came back up. If you don't establish a solid base, right, in this case here at the $80,000 mark or so, you continue this acceleration and actually just keeps getting worse and worse. We established the base and we're bouncing back upwards. I argue that this base is closer now than, let's call it, that we are closer to that base right now. Again, it could be like maybe $4,000 more or so, but from a risk reward angle, it makes too much sense to start accumulating here again. If you were already accumulating before, obviously I would slow that down a little bit. Let's say, for example, you were catching the knife from 125 all the way towards 95 already, so your bags are already quite filled. I would actually be more hesitant to add, even though this is a pretty good price in my opinion, be more hesitant. If you've been sidelined, again, following most of the best traders I know in the world, if almost everybody is saying that this seems like a local bottom territory, again, I'm not saying you should go all in, but it makes more sense to start adding at these levels. How many millions did Dusty lose? Which day are we talking about? The 10th of the 10th, or you mean today or yesterday? Every day is different. You know, many days are bad, but you have to understand. I always say two parts there. One, on the one hand, I always say if you're able to make it once, you'll probably be able to make it again, and I'm still doing very well, I would say. That's one. Two is in order to lose a lot of money, you need to make a lot of money, which I think is also kind of cool. And third, you see, I've got no emotion left. I'm just purely thinking about objective parts. Well, there's a little bit about, I'm going to say, the subjective area of which, like, oh, but this seems like a logical bottom. But it mostly established that all the main factors that were pushing us down, in my opinion, don't seem to play a big role no more. Fake and Gassy says, why are you trading price? Trade movement, not price. Well, actually, this is not really trades. We're talking actually about mostly holding and establishing a basis for where we think things are going to go. And we're basing that on, well, movement. I'm not sure which movement you're talking about. I actually based it on the fundamentals. I based on the fact that all the bearish pressures in terms of news are gone. And I'm establishing the idea that relatively to previous prices, we are actually quite low. We're quite oversold, in my opinion, especially for this part of the market. However, we can attribute some of the worst numbers in the S&P and NASDAQ to perhaps part of this move. But relatively, again, we don't have that much more downside to go before things get really scary. But again, do we want to wait for that, or do we want to, I guess, try it out? That's my thoughts. Yeah. Somebody says, what about quantitative tightening? Well, what is there really to talk about in that field? We've talked before about almost any part that's relevant in that area. Let me quickly find, where's the CME group here again? Here we go. So the only thing that matters to me is this number. I mean, essentially, it's whatever things come out. But ever since, what is his name again? Williams started speaking yesterday. This number changed from 49% or 47% to 73% right now, set back to 71. The probability of a rate cut is higher than no rate cut. This was really one of the main reasons the entire market fell a good chunk. So that's also been fixed. I just don't really fully get why people are so bearish here. And I'm again thinking that it's all based on the fact that the October 10th was so freaking awful that right now we are still in the wake of that. Actually, I've got it open here. Because if we, for example, take a look at CoinGlass and we take a look at liquidations, we are seeing almost record-breaking liquidations nearly every single day. Yesterday, again, we saw what, 1.9 billion? Something like that, 1.9 billion throughout the day on a pretty okay day. Obviously, it was Bitcoin going to like 80.5 thousand, but in reality, the downfall, it's like 10% or something like that. In the grand scheme of things, is not that crazy. The FTX crash and all this is where markets, where altcoins fell 40-50% in a day. We didn't really see any numbers close to this, right? It was way lower. So it's kind of funny how much our crypto space is going, how much more leverage is inside of it right now. But on the opposite side, it's also because, well, the bigger the money we're playing with, the higher Bitcoin goes, the more this will happen. And look at this. A lot of these events were all the way back in 2021, but let's quickly see here. We have one 2025, another 2025. What's this one for 2025? This is over-leveraged longs flush. This is actually a nothing burger, huh? Oh, it's only a top 10. That's unfortunate. I was going to try to look into more of how many relatively are from 2025. And actually, another interesting thing. Fun fact, when do we think the bear market started? All the way back in 2021. When was that? We all established that it's probably like end of 2021, right? So if you ask, this is a funny thing. Guys, you know what? I have a funny little point here. First off, if you're not pressed that like button yet, we've got about 310 people watching, and we had 1,400 people stop by and say hi. If you're watching this right now, make sure you go ahead and press that like button right now. And let me tell you this one thing. And this is going to be an interesting one. When do you think the bear market started? So I'm seeing in the chat now, December 2021. Everybody, just comment below. When did you think the bear market started? A lot of people won't comment that, I think. But let's see. Okay, at least we got Noodle. I'm pretty sure you're saying December of 2021. If we establish that as true, I'm going to say November because it's, this is like the peak. However, you could argue that it actually started the moment that Bitcoin broke below the moving average. But let's just say end of 2021, right? November, December of 2021. When do you think the worst days were for crypto holders in this cycle? I'm going to establish that probably between April and July or something like that, mid-bull run were the worst. And funny enough, actually, Bitcoin's bear market started in November, but altcoins actually flourished for a little while. So that's why I say maybe December or so, basically end of 2021 is when the bear market started, end of 2021. Throughout this process, again, if we look at the numbers, can you see that here, middle of 2021, early 2021, third quarter 2021, first quarter 2021, middle 2021, middle 2021. Most of the worst events back in 2021 were all, if we look back at the price, before Bitcoin hit its all-time high of that season. Are you guys getting that? Trendy says, how's that 60K XRP purchase treating you, little bro? I'm not sure if he's talking to somebody in the chat or to me. Did I do a 60K XRP purchase? I mean, I've done many, so I'm not so sure if you're talking to me or somebody else. Because I don't think specifically I ever bought 60,000 XRP. Me? Where? Yesterday? Oh, okay, could be, yeah, very well. I bought a lot yesterday, and it's actually doing pretty well. I think we're probably up then. Let's see, because I bought way more than 60,000 XRP. Let's see. Let's see here for fun. So, let's check phone. Okay, pocket. Let's see. Let's see the average price. So, for BTC, the average price is, well, there's two main candles that I bought at, but let's just say the candle is, I'm almost buying something, not the purpose. The buy price is about 82,000. The majority of this is for the futures position. The spot, let me also see for fun as well. So for spot BTC, let's do a 4-hourly candle. 4 hours is a bit too much. Let's do 1 hourly candle. The average price here throughout this process is, for spot BTC, also $82,000. So again, we're up to, I guess, $2,000 per BTC on that right now. And XRP, let's go for fun. Check it out. Let's take a look. Oh, I did not buy spot. For XRP, it's all over the place, so it's hard to establish a basis. No, this is BTC. Wait, never mind. That's just very zoomed out. Let's zoom in. So my start of the purchasing started at roughly 199 yesterday, or the day before yesterday, really, and then ended my buying spree with the lowest buys at one. Let's see again. Where's the lowest buy? This is just one platform. Trade, here we go. I'm going to say that most of the buys were between 190, 183. Hard to establish a little bit of a basis right there. 184, maybe average price 186, something like that. So like 3 cents below where we're at right now. So it's pretty okay. Not too bad, not too good. Medium. But again, it's hard to put a nice little number on it because I'm buying on so many platforms and I'm buying in intervals. But regardless, it doesn't matter too much what the results have been for the past, because essentially, even if we're down, up 1, 2, 3%, I don't think that changes too much in the grand scheme of things. It's about, hopefully you're right, and you're right for like 50, 80, or 200% or whatever, or you're wrong, and hopefully you're not wrong more than 30 or something like that percent. And again, that's different for these quicker trades rather than my actual longer term positions. All right, so there's another thing. What's the BTC bottom going to be, you think? I established just now that even at these levels, we are more logical to have found our bottom or very, very close to it. With, again, my personal, like, mostly worst case scenario before I get really panicky being 78,000. So it's like $3,000 below where we just went to. So I'm going to say this, in my opinion, is really, really close to theoretical bottom, because the moment we break through is going to be a little bit of an all hell break loose situation. However, you could argue that even if we go towards that level, let me just quickly establish a nice little line here. Even if we were to go back to it, it could end up being the moment that we just bounce and make ourselves, for example, like a nice little head or shoulder or something along those lines, or potentially just keep continuing on. Just basically finding ourselves at bottom, retesting it, and then continuing up from there. But you could argue that essentially we've already gotten close enough to that level, because right now, again, if you just establish your line slightly angled, you can see we basically found ourselves that previous bottom, right? To go back up from here, not too crazy. But I'm seeing now somebody's saying, no, actually, we're still going down because Japan is hiking their interest rate, which is causing an unwinding of the carry trade. Last time that happened was August 5th, 2024, which is very concerning. A lot of people were discussing this yesterday, and the conclusion was if we are all dependent that much on Japan, it most likely does not have that big an influence on BTC. Could be, but I don't think so. I don't think that's the main factor pushing us down. Why is Bitcoin going down? Well, actually, because Japan's interest rate now, I mean, realistically, that does not sound like the main. If you ask, 50 people in a room, what's the main cause for Bitcoin's decline? I think the probability of one of them saying Japan's interest rate is pretty small. It could have some effect, but it's a bit of a less of a direct one. If you're arguing as to the S&P and some other indices going down because of that, or something of that sort, which causing Bitcoin indirectly to go down in cryptos, okay, can. Market makers will not spare any early buyers. So when you say market makers will not spare early buyers, what do you mean? What do you think a market maker does? People often have these really crazy thoughts about market makers, but most of the time it's actually market participants, which essentially market makers could also be, that have bad intentions of doing something crazy to the chart. Market makers, at the end of the day, they just want to make schmeckles. They just want to make money. But very often that's actually by making the chart flow in an easy way. The easier it is for them to kind of like flow it through for them to predict, I think most of the time the easier the money they make. If you have such heavy moves, there's also the potential for them to make a loss or actually not get that much in. What they want is high volatility, but I'm going to say a panicky situation like what we saw before with some exchanges absolutely going to zero, all liquidity vanishing, is them pulling out because things get too risky and it's hard to manage your margins that way. Market making at the end of the day is just calculation, just math, and very, very tight-knit algorithms. If you get panic to a level you can't fully predict what the next move is going to be, your margins might be off by slight percentages, but again, it's a small percentage gain for the most part. You don't want that. They make a lot of money if things just go smoothly. And again, a bit of panic is good because more volatility, the more money. A lot of volatility very often is bad because they might pull out. Like we saw that day, this is the thing people are saying, that they pulled out and they're not pulling back in because of this scare of another massive crash or something along those lines. Faking says, Google unwinding the carry trade and look at August 5th, 2024. Carry trade is one of the most important things that makes people money move. They borrow Japanese yen with no interest to buy back with no interest to buy stocks cheaper. All right, I'll take a look at that. Appreciate you letting me know. I didn't know that was such a big thing for our markets. That is, I'll take a look at that. Maybe change my mind on that. Appreciate you. This is another part as to what's fun about streaming, right? If we, for example, get to a subject that I might know not so much about, in this case here, I can't think of the theoretical for Japan playing such a big role, but somebody's like, no, Google it. It's really worth your effort. I'm learning something new. I'm happy. That's nice. And the same thing goes for if we're talking about opinions or we're talking about pieces. It's always nice when you're streaming that you can always have some direct feedback with the people. Anyway, fun fact. How many of y'all are holding XRP? I want to know real quick. How many of y'all in the chat box? We've got about 300 people in. How many of y'all are holding XRP right now to this point? How many of you have not given up on this XRP thing? We got Razor, we got yes. We got CR says, why XRP when you can hold USDT? Fair point. Shorting XRP to buy more, fair. A lot of us are doing that. Yep, me, holding, me, yep, City, Deco, Buck, AMGR. Man, these names are tough today, man. Tough crowd. Bear markets are brutal. I don't think this is a bear market, but sure. Even bearish, like momentum, bearish moves are brutal. Holding since the lawsuit. Hey, Sean McLovin. We got Savage, me, Eric, of course. Cat Z, moved XRP to ADA. That is something interesting. John says, haven't sold any. Moved to Ethereum. Really? Ethereum out of all pieces, huh? ETF since 2018. So for all of y'all who are saying yes, what could make you sell? How low would the price have to go to make you sell? Because you don't have to actually say that. For me, I already committed a long time ago and I realized, you know what? I'm taking this one to the freaking moon or to zero. I established that for myself a long time ago. And you may look at me and laugh that I'm losing millions of dollars on XRP, for example, or that I actually lost millions of dollars on XRP already. In the end of the day, I'm still up a lot because XP was 50 cents last time when we really bought heavily for like years. So it's not like I'm losing my input. But I told you before, if you're a crypto person that's really in it, you don't really think about whatever money you put in because you make the money from the money you put in like 10 years ago, right? I don't really put normal money into crypto no more, but all my money is in crypto, so essentially I'm putting everything in, right? So it's hard to establish that basis. All my money is basically crypto money, which of course is risky, but hey, for me, it's basically this industry is so cheap. It's so good that I can't let the opportunity slide. I prefer to go to absolute zero and having tried than not trying at all. When it comes to XRP, BTC, those are my two main things, right? I really am so convinced it's going to work out that if anybody ever were to read like a freaking biography or whatever, they will call me so freaking delusional and stupid for the way in which I'm investing. But I also sometimes look back at guys like George Soros and whatnot, and I think, you know what? You know how people were able to make it so big by having some delusional confidence in something and going for it. And I always remember when it comes to some of the people that have done really well in most of these cycles, you know, they didn't really have an edge. Most of them did not have an edge. They did not have a crazy strategy. They just had a lot of freaking confidence, right place, right time. I often say we are at the right place, the right time, because this crypto stuff is the most money we could ever make. However, which coins exactly or when exactly to buy, those are the pieces of the puzzle that are harder. But are we at the right place at the right time? Oh, yes. The exact right place, like the exact freaking coordinates and exactly what time in terms of the seconds, are a little bit more tough. But when I'm at least already at the right location, and I've seen people, if you know the amount of people I know with crazy sums of money, and to me, crazy sums of money is real crazy sums of money, right? That have established that within a few years. You can never look at money the same way anymore. And there's not even only about longing. It's actually about shorting too. Some people have made the crazy amount of money in their career shorting. Just like 𝗕𝗫'𝘀, I think a lot of money he made was shorting. CC Champion, a lot of the money he made was shorting. And I realize they're not special people, right? You may say, oh, but they're really good at what they do. Sure, they put a lot of time in, but they're not better than you or than me in any, okay, maybe in some ways, but you get my drift, right? It's not like they're super special to be able to do it. They just really locked the frick in on some sector, and they were able to make it work out. Here again, we look at this, the anti-CZ will. You know, some people, they just have the confidence that whenever something's going on, that is BS, and they short the living crap out of it. And all of a sudden, they end up actually with 100 mil P&L, for example. You might think this is impossible, but you know, there's a lot of people I know that are, let's say, worth maybe 100 or 200 million dollars. You know, most of them did not think they'd be worth as much 3 years ago, or maybe they were actually below $10 million 3 years ago, let's say. Because really, when the market's good, sometimes it moves so fast, things can change so well. Just like how my XRP trade before, one of them was a minus 200K and then plus 400K within like a few weeks. And that was, again, taking things quite small because I'm not the craziest of risk takers. Some people, they don't see that. They just go for it, which is how Carl was able to make, I think he's turned like 200K into 5 million in what, 3 weeks as well, or maybe even 5 days, something like that, something stupid. And again, for him, that might not be a lot of money, so he doesn't care as much. But to a lot of people, 200K is achievable. 500K sounds like impossibly far away, right? He was able to turn it around within 2 or 3 weeks by right place, right time. Not saying it's easy, not saying everybody can do it, but I'm just saying again that some of these numbers look so ridiculous, but that's because they are doing something that most people are not willing to do, or they have some confidence that most people can't find. And again, I'm not saying I'm the perfect guy, right? I'm also not a freaking degenerate by putting all my net worth into one long with confidence, but some people do. That's also why they're able to make it big. Or even if they use less leverage, less conviction to the insane part, they just stay consistent. Remember a few months ago, there was this whale, ended up being a whale, who turned, I don't know, $20,000 into 20 million or something like that, or I don't know how much money he started with. How was he able to do that? By doubling down every single time on Ethereum from 1,500 to like 3,400 or something like that, or maybe 4,000. The moment that Eric Trump said, oh, buy ETH, it went down like crazy, right, to 13 or 1,500 bucks. That's when the guy started buying, and every single time the price moved up, he actually went again back in with even more, right, basically reinvesting in more and more and more. And since Ethereum basically had like 2 months or something like that of just crazy up, he made millions upon millions of dollars. Point here again, at this point in the market, I'm again establishing myself as I might as well take that chance to start buying more. Again, I'm not all in. And I'm not, most of my money is not actually riding on this move right now. No, I'm comfortable. Even if it would go down, I'm comfortable. But I'm saying, well, before, it kind of felt like catching a falling knife. To some, it may still feel that way right now. I'm saying, bottom-wise, like talking about the previous bottom stuff, we could, of course, try to, for XRP, go for a few more cents down. Maybe like to let's say maybe, like 170 something, 77. For Bitcoin, we could look at slightly down, maybe what, 77K. But now this is the area where if we don't hold, things look quite bad. And again, the main things that we're going to see that on is most likely Fed decision, 10th of December, MicroStrategy's decision, like middle of January, or stocks, which could happen any day. Or maybe like you just said to me now, this Japan situation. We're going to take a look at that. Yeah, AI bubble, of course, anything in that field could happen any freaking day. If the S&P and NASDAQ make crazy lows this month, they made already their lowest points in like almost 20 years. Their biggest declines for November. If that continues on, there's a small little chance. But then again, even at that point, crypto could decouple because at some point you found yourself your basis. Unless you again think this is going to zero. But yeah, these are my thoughts. Either way, I'm just buying that. Some people will call me stupid because, hey, it may be going down a bit more. I'm not saying necessarily that 83 is a good buy, by the way. Mostly talking about 80.5 that we just saw yesterday. Or for XRP again, like the low 180s instead of the high 180s. If you're buying today, right, at these higher price points, sure, it's still cheap in the grand scheme of things, still down 30, 40%. But, obviously, if you can buy it another 5% lower, that's, again, 5% less risk, right? Because, again, already a 10% up, perhaps, on this move for XRP, for example. Okay, 5%, let's say. You get it. Anyway. All right, boys, I just want to quickly get my thoughts out there. Where's the final warning? The final warning is essentially everything I've just told you. You may never get the chance to buy this cheap again. If I, 2 months ago, told you, boys, skip all this. You can buy Bitcoin below, below 80,000 bucks. We got to 80.5K, right? Most people would laugh in my face. And right now we're getting there. People are like, oh, but it's going to go down way lower. Just establish that the opportunity right now is so freaking nice. And sure, the momentum is different, so we're not going all in because, well, if the market's mostly moving down, you expect it to move continuously down. And then again, looking at XRP, if we look back at previous times, if we had just started going in heavily at these lows, again, we started at least, maybe we've not gotten our full bags filled, but at least we've had a good, juicy buy-in at relatively, really, really cheap prices. And unless you think this stuff is going to zero, it just, at least to me, feels nice to get in. And like I said before, if you're looking for some more trading stuff, there's also a link in the description down below to our Telegram. This is completely free, and I've got only one analyst little group in there now, but very soon, if some more people hop on in and actually join the Telegram, it's completely free, by the way, first link down below, I'll actually add more of my analysts, or at least different people with different thoughts in here, so you can kind of like compare and do your own strategy based on what other people are saying. I also have a lot of analysis. I have so much stuff to share, but I want to make sure that at least some people are looking forward to it. Right now, we've got a few people in the core, and I'm going to close it at 100 people, just because I want some solid people in there. And then we're going to also hopefully establish more of a chat and stuff. There's a chat, but it's not being used too much. Hopefully get the most motivated people in there that are actually, willing to try some stuff out. Thus far, it's been previously pretty amazing. I, of course, can't guarantee future results, but here are some of the results from people. Profit has been pretty nice, and I think everybody who has joined thus far has been pretty happy about it as well. Regardless, check it out. It's the first link in the description down below. Most people, I think, if they join now, they wish they would have joined earlier because all days since I opened it up have been really, really nice. Again, this will only be for a limited amount of people, but it's completely free. No cost to you. You can always leave. No cost, no nothing. Check it out. Link is down below. And I'll see you guys get another video somewhere there today. Maybe a stream. Who knows? But thank you all for stopping by and saying hi. If you didn't do it yet, make sure you press that like button. And more cool stuff is coming up. And by the way, I also have an Instagram, by the way, if you want to see more of my normal life. You might want to check that out. But cheers, everybody. Take a good rest because the market's not going to let you rest. Never.